What's up YouTube, it's your boy Bernard for Reals, and on this video I'm going to be sharing with you guys 5 tips on how you can remember everything that you learn and store it like an elephant. I'm sure some of us here have been in that situation where before an exam you're studying and like everything seems to be going well. I mean, at some point you're like, oh my god, I'm gonna kill this exam. And then fast forward to the day of the exam, you see the first paper, and it's at that moment you turn into like a philosopher called Socrates, and you're like, now I know that I know nothing. And for most of the exam, you're basically blacked out because you can't seem to remember the things that you thought you read while you were studying. Now in this video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys 5 things that you can do to reduce or to stop this scenario from ever happening to you again. Now let's get into it. Now the first point in this video is spaced repetition. I'm sure you may be wondering, what is spaced repetition? Now spaced repetition is when you review facts that you've studied periodically over a period of time. How did this come about? Now, a German psychologist called Hermann Ebbinghaus decided to make a study on forgetting. And what he discovered was quite interesting. He discovered that we humans, or most humans, tend to forget along a curve. Now, if you check it up the internet, you're going to find something called the forgetting curve. The first time we read something, after a period of time, there is a huge dip in retention. And over time, there's a steady reduction in the capacity that we can remember that material that we read initially. Eventually, if care is not taken and we do not revise that material, we are going to forget. Now, the whole idea of spaced repetition is actually you taking advantage of what is called the spacing effect. Every single time we review a topic over a period of time, it's a whole lot difficult for us to forget that fact that we've reviewed using spaced repetition. For this scientific reason, there are a lot of apps out there that actually take advantage of the spacing effect, and a perfect example of such an app is Anki. Now, personally, I use Anki like when I was learning Russian. I mean, I also use it for like medical school and stuff like that, but like the epitome of forgetting is when you're learning a new language, because you basically have no exposure to like in like your daily life unless you really make the effort to do so. So it's a whole lot easier to forget. Now, you can also use it for school. I use it for medical school, and concepts that are quite easy to forget over time, continuously using spaced repetition, it basically at some point it sticks. And what I really love about Anki is that there is like an inbuilt algorithm that actually helps you to pick cards that are due for review that at just the point you're about to forget those cards. And when you review those cards, it takes it further back in the database. So it's going to take a slightly longer period of time before you see that card again, making perfect use of what I said initially, the spacing effect. And guys, please don't forget to like the video if you like it and subscribe if you like type of content. Now let's continue. The second tip I have for you guys is retrieval practice. Now, what do I mean by retrieval practice? Now, one of the main reasons why people tend to forget things when they eventually get to the exam hall is because while studying, they do not actually practice what every exam requires you to practice. Now, what do I mean by this? When you go to the exam hall, you are tested on one skill, and one skill only: your ability to recall information. And while studying, when you do not exercise that skill, you're basically weak in that area. Now, I'm sure you might be wondering, like, like I study, so I'm expected to remember in the exam hall. Actually, basically, what many people do is that when they read something, they do not really exercise the skill. What they're basically exercising is their ability to recognize definitions. Now, what do I mean by this? Take, for example, I'm reading a concept in a textbook, right? And I finish that concept and I move on to another thing. And I try to remember what I read, but I just can't remember it. And I happen to go back to what I initially read and I look at the concept. Now, I recognize that concept. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, yeah, that's what it meant. But in essence, I've actually not really exercised retrieval. Like, I've not actually tried to recall what I just read. And when you don't practice the process of retrieving information during the exam, since there is most exams that people write, there is no textbook close to them. And even if they're given like an open book exam, there's not going to be enough time to actually look for that specific fact they might be looking for in the exam hall. So they tend to be stranded because what they were basically exercising was power of recognition, but not really the power of recall. Now, the third tip in this video is interleaving. Now, what do I mean by interleaving? Now, interleaving is basically simultaneously learning similar facts and concepts. Now, take for example, you're having like a math exam, and instead of you just wholly focusing on permutations and only solving questions on permutations, now when you use the concept known as interleaving, you are basically varying your study. Like maybe you spend like 30 minutes doing permutations and then 20 minutes or 30 minutes also doing probability. Interleaving method is good if you're like into math and stuff like that. You easily remember those concepts that you read compared to when you only focus on one concept. And the next tip in this video is paying attention. Our abilities to remember something is directly proportional to the amount of attention we pay on that thing. Now, have you ever been in that situation where you're reading a book for like, let's say 20 minutes, and after that 20-minute time period, a friend walks in and asks you, what have you read so far? And you can only remember like the barest minimum of what that page actually says. Now, what just happened right there is that you probably were not paying attention while you were studying that material. And so essentially, your ability to pay attention while studying a concept is proportional to the ability to recall that concept in future. And the next tip in this video is taking notes in your own words. What do I mean by this? Now, when you actually take notes in your own words, you are basically forcing yourself to synthesize your own version of that idea in your own way. Because when you just read a textbook or you read a book or you read a piece of text, the author is doing your thinking for you. And you think you're thinking, but you're basically just following the thought processes of the author of that book. And when you try to write down the ideas you get from that book in your own words, you're basically doing your own thinking and synthesizing your own version of that material, and it's a whole lot more difficult for you to forget your own version of anything. And guys, question of the day, if you have more tips on how you can have the mind or the brain of an elephant, please put it down in the comments below so we can share and engage. And guys, if you like this video, please like, and if you like some of the content, please subscribe, and remember to always keep it real. And guys, if you like this video, maybe you may like a video somewhere on the end screen. And yeah, bye guys.